Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is the verbatim federal courtroom testimony of the Sean Diddy Combs trial, as reported by Inner City Press. In a packed federal courtroom, the voice of Tupac Shakur echoed through the speakers. Raw, emotional, and unfiltered. It was a never-before-heard recording pulled from an unreleased interview buried for decades, allegedly blocked by Sean Diddy Combs himself. The tape was a ghost, rising to haunt a crumbling empire. But now, in the middle of an explosive trial that's unraveling Diddy's empire, this tape has resurfaced, and it might be the final nail in the coffin. Tupac, once dismissed as paranoid, now sounds like a prophet. His voice was a blade slicing through decades of lies. His words, recorded shortly before his death, paint a chilling picture of betrayal, manipulation, and power games inside the music industry. And at the center of it all, Diddy. This isn't just about East Coast versus West Coast anymore. This is about a man who may have known he was being hunted and left a message behind just in case. The message was a warning, etched in time for this moment. The courtroom wasn't even on people's radar yet, but Tupac had already seen it coming. Long before the trial, long before Cassie ever testified or Monique looked the industry in the face and said no more, Tupac was already shouting from the inside, and nobody wanted to listen. Not because they didn't believe him, but because the truth he was trying to tell was too dangerous. It was a truth that could shatter empires, and Diddy knew it. It would have cracked the glass way too early. It started with an interview, one that's become something of a legend. Angie Martinez, 2 hours long, but we only ever got 10 minutes. Angie said it was to protect the peace, that airing the full conversation would have ignited the East Coast-West Coast war even further. But now we know that was a lie. And not just any lie. A lie backed by power. Because according to Gene Deal, one of Diddy's closest men, it wasn't Angie's decision to hold the interview back. It was Diddy's. The suppression was a power play, silencing a voice too loud to control. Let that settle for a moment. Back then, Diddy wasn't just a rising mogul. He was a kingmaker, a manipulator, and according to multiple insiders, he was running Hot 97 from behind the scenes. He had pull, real pull, enough to kill stories before they could breathe, enough to erase voices including Tupac. In that unreleased interview, Pac was calm but dangerous. His words felt like warning shots, hidden as commentary. "I'm like a lightning rod," he said. "I'm attacking New York's finest, their self-proclaimed king of New York." The shots were aimed at Diddy's crown, exposing his hollow reign. He wasn't just taking shots at a rival label, he was naming Diddy without naming him. You have to understand, this wasn't just about music. He saw something in Diddy early. The manipulation, the insecurity, the way he moved, the power he collected, not from respect, but from silence. Pac's insight was a spotlight, revealing Diddy's true face. Every time it benefits New York, he represents New York. When it don't, now he's just another rapper, Pac said. But y'all let him wear your colors. It was bold, it was fearless, and it was the beginning of something no one was ready to face. Now, all these years later, in a courtroom packed with testimonies, sealed recordings, and names falling like dominoes, we're seeing exactly what Pac tried to show us. That Diddy wasn't just playing the game. He was rewriting the rules quietly, carefully, like a man building an empire of secrets. And Pac, he tried to warn us. The public speak or disapprove, on purpose. The disapprovance was a crime, burying truth to protect power. It started like any other day in court. Lawyers murmuring, reporters adjusting their mics, everyone waiting for the next name to be called. But what came next wasn't another lawsuit. It was the unraveling of a machine. The prosecution wasn't just bringing up abuse. They were bringing up infrastructure, a network of fear, money, NDAs, and forced silence. And Diddy? He wasn't just involved, he was in the center of it. Cassie Ventura's voice cracked, but her words didn't. She told them about the nights, the cameras, the rituals, the way networking turned into something else. Her phone was taken, her choices erased. She described velvet-curtained hotel rooms and a man who didn't control. The control was a cage, stripping away her freedom. She said something that shook the gallery. You were absorbed into it. The absorption was a theft, claiming lives for his empire. But Cassie wasn't alone. The next witness wasn't an actress, wasn't a singer. He was the man who used to guard the front door. Gene Deal, Diddy's personal bodyguard. He looked Diddy in the eyes and said, "You weren't protecting anything. You were hiding everything." The hiding was a fortress, shielding Diddy's secrets. Deal confirmed what many suspected. Angie Martinez's tape, he heard it. He buried it. Because in that interview, Pac was laying out a blueprint, a map straight to the truth. And Puff knew if the world heard that, his empire would burn. Then came the wild card, Monique. She wasn't expected. She wasn't scheduled. But the moment she stepped onto the stand, the temperature in the room dropped. She didn't come with receipts, timelines, quotes, private audio. She told the court, people weren't protecting Diddy because they believed him. They were protecting their own seats at the table, and Diddy was the head of it. The table was a throne, ruling over a silenced industry. She pointed to names, big ones, Tyler Perry, Oprah, executives, media heads. They weren't just quiet, she said. They were complicit. At one point, she looked toward the jury and said, this trial was supposed to be about Cassie. But now, this is about the entire ecosystem that let this happen. The ecosystem was a beast, feeding on fear and ambition. The judge didn't stop her. No one could. Because in that moment, it wasn't just about Diddy anymore. It was but a world that let someone like him become untouchable for decades while silencing the people who dared to speak. And Tupac was the first person they tried to silence. He used to take bullets for him. Now he was aiming truths at him. Gene Deal walked into that courtroom like he'd been holding it in for decades. And maybe he had. He stood behind Diddy during the biggest years of Bad Boy. He saw the parties, the guests, the unspoken rules. But now he was done pretending. He took the oath, looked over at Diddy and said, "You remember what you told me back then? You said, Tup talks too much, and one day someone's going to shut him up." I didn't forget that. The memory was a dagger, piercing Diddy's carefully crafted image. You could hear hearts drop. Gene wasn't theatrical. He was tired. He wasn't angry. He was ready. He described how Diddy ordered the Angie Martinez interview to be buried. He had ears on everything, Gene said. Nothing got past him. And Pac's voice, that was too dangerous to let out. The burial was a silencing, snuffing out a prophet's voice. He told the jury that Diddy's obsession with Pac was personal. It wasn't just competition. It was envy. Puff studied him. The way he dressed, the way he moved. He wanted that, but he couldn't buy it. He told them about the way Diddy would copy Tupac's Versace fits, chase the same women, mimic his speeches, even steal his Grammy speech line for line. The mimicry was a theft, stealing Pac's essence for clout. He didn't just want to be better, Gene said. He wanted to be him. But the part that turned stomachs was when Gene talked about fear. He said, Diddy didn't build an empire on talent. He built it on surveillance. He kept footage. He paid people off. He knew who to threaten, who to reward, and who to erase. The empire was a prison, locking away truth with fear. And Tupac saw through all of it. He was the first one to say, Diddy might be playing with something dark. And the moment he said that out loud, everything changed. Gene's voice cracked just once. They didn't just want Pac gone. They wanted what he stood for gone. The erasure was a purge, wiping out a symbol of resistance. And with that, The courtroom fell silent. Tupac never called himself a hero, but he had a dangerous habit of telling the truth before anyone was ready to hear it. He didn't just rap about the streets. He studied them. And behind that iconic charisma was a man who spent more time reading than people realized. Researching, watching, connecting dots. And one of the earliest patterns he caught was Diddy. His vision was a lens, exposing Diddy's hidden machinations. Pac had always been suspicious, but according to Suge Knight and those closest to him, it was more than suspicion. It was alarm. He started noticing strange behavior, the kind that didn't add up. Why was this executive suddenly in every room? Why were so many young artists tied to contracts they couldn't escape? And why, when Pac tried to talk about it, did people laugh him off like he was paranoid? The dismissal was a tactic, deflecting his piercing gaze. He wasn't paranoid, he was paying attention. Suge later said Tupac once told him, "Something ain't right about Puff. I don't know what it is yet, but it's coming." The warning was a premonition, sensing a storm on the horizon. Pac didn't throw accusations lightly. He did his homework. And when he started hearing whispers about how certain producers were moving, about secret boyfriends, NDAs, and a lot of young dancers being kept around, he started asking the kinds of questions that made powerful people nervous. He didn't care if someone was gay. That wasn't the issue. What Pac did care about was exploitation. Power being used to manipulate people who didn't know any better, especially kids. The exploitation was a cancer, preying on the vulnerable. Suge said Pac was planning to go public, not to out anyone, but to protect people. He said, "Some of these dudes might be around somebody's child one day," Suge claimed, "and if we know something, we got a duty to speak on it." But Pac never got that chance, because when he started connecting the dots between Diddy, Uptown Records founder Andre Harrell, and the dancers and artists in their orbit, the warning lights got brighter. The dots were a map, leading to a dangerous truth. He knew the industry was more than smoke and mirrors. It was concrete and control. And he believed Diddy was just a gatekeeper for something even bigger. This wasn't about jealousy. It wasn't rap beef. This was a man seeing a machine for what it was, a silence engine. And Diddy wasn't just a passenger. He was driving the tragedy. People called Pac crazy, said he was spiraling, said he was starting drama. They didn't realize until decades later he was one of the only people trying to stop it. You can feel the tension shift in the courtroom anytime someone mentions Quad Studio. It's like stepping into the moment history pivoted, and no one noticed, except Quad Recording Studios in Manhattan. He's there for a late-night session. Something simple, routine. But as soon as he enters the lobby, chaos erupts. Gunshots. He's ambushed, robbed, shot 5 times, and left for dead. He survived. But the part he couldn't walk off, the betrayal. The betrayal was a wound deeper than any bullet. From the hospital bed, Pac already knew this wasn't random. This wasn't a mugging gone wrong. This was a death. Someone knew he'd be there. Someone made sure the lights in the hallway were out, and someone wanted him silenced, just not dead, not yet. And in Pac's eyes, all roads led back to Bad Boy. It wasn't just a theory. It was the look in people's eyes afterward, the silence, the way Biggie Smalls and Diddy pretended not to know anything, even though they were upstairs in the same building. The silence was a confession, louder than any denial. Pac said they never visited, never called, just kept moving like nothing happened. And then Diddy dropped a track, Who Shot Ya? Timing suspicious, lyrics cold. And while Diddy and Biggie claimed it was recorded before the shooting, Pac didn't believe it. He heard a message in it. Stay quiet, or next time you don't get up. The song was a threat, cloaked in rhythm and rhyme. Years later, in interviews, Diddy would smirk through questions about the shooting. He'd dodge, deflect, say he had no idea what happened that night. But others close to the scene say Diddy knew more than he ever let on. Gene Deal testified that there were murmurs inside Bad Boy almost immediately after the shooting. Some people laughed about it, others looked shaken. But nobody acted surprised. The laughter was a mask hiding a chilling truth. Pac went to jail not long after, and while he was locked up, the industry shifted. Bad Boy rose, Death Boy wobbled, and Diddy's shadow grew. Tupac later said, "That moment taught me the game, the rules." He never walked into another building without watching every door, because after Quad Studios, he knew the real danger doesn't come from your enemies. It comes from the ones you used to call family. And in that moment, Diddy went from rival to suspect. You can't buy charisma. You can't fake spirit. And that's what made Diddy furious. Tupac had what every executive in the game wanted: real power. Not money, not airplay, not even awards. He had people. The streets loved him. Women adored him. Men feared and respected him. He didn't walk into a room. He took it over. And Diddy hated that. From the way he moved, to the women he talked to the exact shirts he wore. It started with admiration, but it turned dark real fast. Pac wore Versace. Suddenly Diddy was in Versace. Pac talked about loyalty, the struggle, and the black community. Next thing you know, Puff was posting inspirational quotes and pretending he was fighting the same battle, but everybody knew it was all performance. The performance was a theft, stealing Pac's authenticity for profit. There's even a story from a Grammy night, where Diddy stood on stage, accepted an award, and quoted Tupac's old speech word for word. That wasn't coincidence. That was theft in plain sight. And then came Kim Porter. Pac and Kim had crossed paths before. She respected him. Rumors say she admired his fire, his truth, and Diddy knew that. The admiration was a spark, igniting Diddy's jealousy. Some even say his relationship with Kim turned hostile after she brought up Tupac too many times. Jealousy, maybe. But this wasn't about love. This was about control. Pac knew what was happening. He joked about it once, calling Diddy his biggest fan. But behind the scenes, he wasn't laughing. He told friends, "That man wants to be me so bad, you'll do anything, even hurt him." The hurt was a prophecy, foretelling a deadly rivalry. That's what fans now wonder. When the testimonies started painting Diddy not just as manipulative, but as strategic, obsessive, and calculating, Tupac's old words started to make sense. Diddy doesn't just want fame, he once said. He wants immortality. And he'll bury anyone to get it. Now, with the courtroom filled with evidence, transcripts, and voices finally speaking out, one thing's clear. Tupac wasn't paranoid. He just saw the monster first. The thing that haunts people most isn't what was said, it's what wasn't. The Angie Martinez interview with Tupac is a ghost, a phantom that's lingered in the hip-hop world for decades. Everyone knows it happened. Everyone knows it was explosive. But almost nobody has heard because, out of the 2 hours recorded, only 10 minutes were ever released to the public. The ghost was a silenced truth, waiting to be unleashed. And now, with courtroom pressure tightening, we're finally starting to understand why. When Angie first spoke about the interview, she sounded nervous, even years later. She said she feared that playing the full tape back then could have started a war. But the story never quite added up. Why would a journalist fly solo into hostile territory, land the biggest interview of her career, and then lock it in a vault? That's because it wasn't her decision. Not really. According to Gene Deal and other insiders, the man who stopped the full interview from airing was Sean Diddy Combs himself. The decision was a cover-up, protecting Diddy's fragile empire. It wasn't just about protecting the East Coast. It was about protecting himself, because on that tape, Tupac didn't just talk about the beef. He didn't just air grievances. He pulled the curtain back on the industry and named names, real ones. Steele testified that Puffy was one of the only people to hear the full tape. He called it damaging and uncontrollable, and he made one call to Hot 97, and that was all it took. The call was a command, enforcing silence with power. He didn't own the station, but he owned the fear, and when Diddy said, "Don't air it," they didn't. Angie said herself, "I was literally afraid somebody would die if it aired." But if that were true, then why was she afraid? What exactly did Pac say? Insiders who claimed to have heard portions of the full interview say Pac didn't hold back. He accused Diddy of orchestrating a culture of silence, calling him the face of something way darker. The accusation was a spotlight, exposing a hidden machine. He talked about people being paid to disappear, about setups disguised as street beef, and how Diddy was playing chess while everyone else was rapping. He even allegedly warned that the rap game was being hijacked by people who didn't care about the music, but cared about controlling the voices behind it. He said Diddy was more politician than artist, more cult leader than mogul. The description was a portrait revealing Diddy's true nature. And the most chilling quote, according to those who've heard it, "He doesn't just want you to follow him, he wants to own your voice." It's now clear why that interview never saw the light of day. Because, if it had, the story of East versus West might have shifted into something far bigger, something institutional. Now, with trials unfolding and names being dragged into the light, the world wants to know, where is that tape? Who still has a copy? And what else did Tupac try to warn us about? Before it was too late. Because when the full truth finally surfaces, it won't just shake the music industry. It might burn it down. There's a reason the streets listened to Tupac. It wasn't just his lyrics. It was his vision. He didn't just speak truth to power. He studied it. And before his death, he started speaking about something bigger than any feud or label. Something no rapper wanted to say out loud. That music, black music, was being used as a weapon. The weapon was a trap, luring artists into destruction. Pac had started connecting dots, most artists being used. He talked about how the same corporations that owned record labels also owned private prisons, and how the lyrics getting pushed weren't just entertainment, they were bait. "Follow this life, and you follow it right into a cage," Pac warned. The warning was a beacon, illuminating a rigged game. And when you looked back, he wasn't wrong. In interviews, Pac said, "They tell you to rap about killing your brother, selling drugs to your own people, and being proud of it. But you try to rap about uplifting your people, suddenly the budget's gone." Now, flash forward to the Diddy trial, and suddenly this theory doesn't sound crazy anymore. Because what prosecutors are discovering is that Diddy's empire may have been more than vanity. It may have been a pipeline, parties' contracts, NDAs, manipulation. The pipeline was a machine, churning out silence and control. It wasn't just scandal, it was design, a way to filter out who could speak, who had to stay silent, and who got buried. Will Smith's testimony echoed the same theme. He said he didn't feel like he'd been invited into a world. He'd been initiated, a guest at first, a prisoner by the end. The initiation was a ritual, binding artists to Diddy's will. And now, others are starting to say the same. According to courtroom insiders, Neek hinted that Diddy had been protecting higher-ups, names we still executives, politicians, media heads, the people who don't get their hands dirty but always keep them in the money. Tupac tried to tell us it wasn't just Diddy. Diddy was just a gatekeeper. The real architects were behind the glass. The architects were shadows, pulling strings from unseen rooms. Pac allegedly said, "When you trace the money, it doesn't end at Bad Boy. It ends at the boardroom." He spoke about shadow deals, how artists were being rewarded for pushing destruction and punished for pushing knowledge. And every time a young black man rapped about murder and drug dealing, a check got cut somewhere far away. "Who benefits from the chaos?" Ask G asked. The answer, not us. Now as sealed documents start to leak and the courtroom widens its scope, you can feel it. That hidden hand is being forced into the light, and Tupac warnings, once dismissed as paranoia, are starting to look like prophecy. He didn't just know the game. He saw the board. And now the world's finally catching up. By the time the trial reached its third week, something had shifted. It wasn't just about Cassie anymore. It wasn't just about party tapes or NDAs. There was a new question lingering in every hallway, whispered outside the courthouse, screamed across comment sections. Did Diddy have something to do with Tupac's murder? For decades it was treated like tabloid bait, a conspiracy theory, but as each witness spoke, as each new piece of evidence unfolded, a pattern began to form. A trail of fear, of silence, of control. And at the center of it all was Diddy. Cassie described a man who viewed control as currency, who didn't ask for loyalty, he demanded obedience. The obedience was a shackle, chaining all who complied. Monique described a system designed to elevate him while crushing everyone else. Gene Deal painted a portrait of someone who had to win, no matter the cost. And Will Smith, he testified that Diddy didn't just manipulate careers. He manipulated reality. Blackmail, surveillance, footage used as leverage. He said, I wasn't invited to that party. I was trapped in it. The trap was a prison, locking truth behind velvet curtains. Then came the tapes. Audio, pieces of a puzzle that seemed to hint at something much bigger. Not just shame, but cover-up. Prosecutors haven't formally tied Diddy to Pac's murder, not yet. But what they've done is opened the door to a possibility that's haunted hip-hop for 28 years. Tupac knew he was being followed. He said it in interviews. He rapped about it. He feared betrayal from inside the industry, more than from any gang. The betrayal was a shadow, stalking him to his end. And when the bullets hit his body in Vegas, he was already looking over his shoulder. The theory now, he wasn't just the victim of random violence. He was the first casualty in a war of silence. The war was a purge, silencing voices too loud to control. A message to anyone else who got too loud, too curious. People said Pac was paranoid. But the courtroom doesn't think so anymore, because the people who dismissed him are now on the witness stand. And the people who feared him, they're the ones under investigation. Tupac's murder may not have been solved yet, but one thing is clear. This trial has blown the door wide open, and the question hanging in the air isn't if Diddy was involved,